Hello everyone, my name is Christine Murphy. This is my capstone proposal presentation. This is my 7th year teaching. I've had the privilege of teaching some pretty awesome kids. Here on the left is a collection of some of the work from my last 6 years. In combination with teaching full-time, this year I've opened a new high school, working 6th grade to 11th grade and AP for the first time. I also work a part-time job at Disney. We've adopted a new fur baby this year through the pandemic, and I'm also a new mom again. Here are my 2 daughters, Lena, the oldest, and I have Claire here in the background. She is now 10 months old. All right, so my capstone and topic is titled Limitations, Understandings, and Adaptations for the Muslim Student Within Art. Basically, my topic is addressing what education looks like within the Muslim culture, ethnographically studying and then researching Islamic norms in education, and then comparing that to Western art practice or education practice within art. Basically, my aim is to assess basically how multiculturalism curriculum is differentiated for students for Islamic culture, and basically to determine if there are best practices or if there are gaps in education for educators to be more inclusive with their teaching strategies. The rationale and contextual background of this project is basically defending the need for additional education for both pre-service educators and continual education by public institutions to further necessitate the importance of differentiation learning strategies for art teachers for students with different religious backgrounds. So essentially, I feel like there's missing components from multicultural education courses for teachers prior to becoming a teacher, and then further professional development opportunities for educators that help them decide best practices for their curriculum for students of multicultural faiths and diversities. Specifically regarding the Islamic religion, there are a lot of things that those students are unable to do based on their religious beliefs. So for example, under their monotheistic religion, which is one God, they believe that they are not allowed to create anything that is representational and that could be viewed as divine. So they would not be permitted to draw things with eyes, for example, or create three-dimensional sculptures that have souls, essentially. So on their judgment day, which is known as the day of their death, they have to breathe life into the object, and because that was not created by God, it was created at their hands. That is against and strongly discouraged in their religion, because then it would be looked at as Satan actually created it. So that's one of the main reasons why they are not able to create things three-dimensionally or with eyes. So my major research questions would be, which guide my research, are what strategies are implemented in professional learning communities or pre-service education to guide and help our teachers provide highly effective curriculum with practicing Muslim students. Also, how confident are teachers implementing their educational practices and instructional design towards the Muslim student within art? And lastly, what are limitations within the Islamic community that are not Western-centered educational ideologies, which could lead to inequitable learning experiences? So the literature review, I have some literature here. Peter Smith was a scholar that I found a lot of interest in his reading. He basically emphasized that education is not a one-size-fits-all. There's not a one-size-fits-all method. And through the Islamic society, the way they view and approach and the methods in which they instill education and knowledge can greatly differ from how here in the United States, Western systematic ways of teaching and learning are facilitated in the classroom. And also he points out that the majority will overshadow the minority. So if your classroom is, majority white or of Christian faith, the 1 or 2 students who are not of that faith will suffer, unfortunately. And so in terms of our education, multiculturalism should be taught to pre-service educators so they become aware of how things need to be unplanned and structureless so they could flow with the body of the students that they plan to educate. Another researcher that I found interest with my literature review was Lori Rubin and Jennifer. Basically, they addressed that with pre-service teacher education, there is essential criteria not being implemented and discussed with educators about students of multicultural backgrounds, which is creating educators who are ill-prepared and not prepared for the classroom. So basically, they're saying in this article that I read that the few strategies that are introduced to teachers on guiding them are slim to none. There's not many that are introduced, and some ways to mitigate that issue is to being able to offer access to diverse field experiences to better prepare teachers. So, seeing maybe a Title I school or seeing a low poverty income school, seeing a non-Title I school, and being able to move around in the area to better suit your education. And then another way was finding research of different cultures. So basically, a lot of the teachers currently are white and they are middle class, and most of them are women. And so we are only comfortable, and I say we as this is my positionality. I am white, I am middle class, and I am a woman. We are only comfortable teaching what we know, and so for a lot of people that puts them outside their comfort zone, and that's why people still teach, teachers still teach, I still teach, with a Eurocentric background because I only teach what I know. Richard Hickman was also a really great resource. He engaged and addressed the understandings and limitations around students specifically of Islamic background within art. And he also further ratified the idea that students who are Muslim will not engage with artworks that require creation, as it's against their religious beliefs, and that when you're planning lessons for students of multicultural diversity, it means looking at the learning objective in a broader frame so that way you can address the needs of all students. He also said that people who are of the minority will become more devoted to their religious belief the more removed they are from their family and their mother culture. So if you teach in a predominantly white school and you have one or two students who are of another background, unfortunately they will suffer in terms of their education if your practice is not broadly rendering the entire sum of the body and you're only focused on one specific ethnicity or culture in your classroom. So the research method I would like to use is ethnography as my methodology, and then data collection as my method. I'll be collecting data using surveys, interviewing, and scholarly journals to collect data. I want to study two sets of people, art educators and a group of Muslim adults. Specific to my ethnography study, I'll be using an additional method of surveying to find out the knowledge of the art teachers already. And basically, through that survey, what I'd like to look at is their beliefs, the teachers' beliefs towards um, practicing Muslims, towards art education, and how the cultures and the religious beliefs can affect the instructional strategies of our educators in a Western influenced country. I'll be working directly with people, so that means my project will need to have IRB approval. In order to collect my data and the method, it will consist of having better understanding. So what I'd like to look for is information that helps me further understand the Islamic culture in regards to their faith and religion. I'd like to collect this through interviews, stories, maybe even artifacts of what it's like to be Muslim and how education looks like to them and how that fits into their life. Additionally, I would like to survey and interview, as I said, other art educators about their experience with teaching students of Muslim faith in their classrooms, and to see what their level of confidence is and what ways they've modified and adapt their curriculum to meet the needs of those diverse students. So the method for my collection will be recording my interviews with teachers and then Islamic faith participants. I'd also like to keep a journal of my personal impressions and feelings after I've had conversations with my interviewees. This is a qualitative component of my research, which I'll use to gather information to determine if the art educator survey can help answer my investigative question, which ultimately is, are educators prepared to adapt their curriculum based on inclusive practices? Qualratics, I'm probably mispronouncing that, is an online survey company, and I will be using them to survey our educators around the United States. And this is a great online free platform where it will host all of my data, and I can monitor and reflect to determine if there are any patterns. ultimately what I'm looking for is to see if my data can create some sort of pattern where I can further investigate any specific path that may be drawn from the survey. So what's next? Formulating my survey is essential to address the specific concerns. I really need a killer questionnaire that has an authentic Likert scale, so that way my data has a good standard deviation, so that way I know my data is accurate. Also finding a group of willing participants, so looking for teachers, looking for Muslim religious leaders in the community, or even teachers. I don't want to work with students because I don't feel like students are fully prepared to exemplify or explain their religious beliefs. I also like to collect more literature that corresponds and relates to my ideas. That way I can further ratify and really hone in on my research.